Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. An explosive weekend in the Middle East. Hamas missiles blasted out of the sky. Iran's killer drones demolished on the ground. And Benjamin Netanyahu warns, quote, "If you come to kill us, we'll kill you first." Chris Mitchell has more.
This is the moment Israelis enjoying a summer concert near the Gaza border came under attack. You can see them running for cover. The Iron Dome missile defense system shot down 2 of the 3 missiles. Meanwhile, in Syria, surveillance video of an Iranian squad north of Damascus with a killer drone preparing to attack northern Israel. The IDF says it eliminated the threat before the Iranians ever got a chance to strike.
If someone is coming to kill you, hurry and kill him. In a complex effort by the defense establishment, we have uncovered that Iran's Quds force sent a special unit of Shiite activists to Syria to kill Israelis in the Golan via explosives. I want to emphasize this is Iran's initiative, it is Iran's command, and it is an Iranian mission.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel would not tolerate Iranian targets from any country in the region. Last week, U.S. officials confirmed that Israel has now attacked Iranian targets inside Iraq.
It's upping the ante by taking this issue over to Iraqi soil itself. It's very significant, but it's not part of a new war. It's part of a war that's been underway for a while and is now widening in its dimension.
Middle East expert Jonathan Spire explains why Israel is taking this fight against Iran into Iraq.
There's been a very deeply felt concern in the Israeli security establishment in recent months at the prospect of the Iranians placing short-range ballistic missiles in the hands of their Iraqi Shia militia clients, who would then deploy those missiles in western Iraq and thus have Israel within range of those missiles for the first time.
Adding to the region's tension, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, vowed to retaliate against Israel's airstrikes in Syria and an Israeli drone attack against Hezbollah's stronghold inside Beirut. Another signal of the threats Israel faces from all of its borders and beyond. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. In other news, President Trump says China is ready to make a deal. But that's not what the Chinese say. John Jessup has more on that.
Thanks, Pat. Fears of a global economic downturn were the backdrop for the G7 summit this weekend in France. But the conversation turned when an Iranian leader appeared on the scene. President Trump says he approved of France's invitation of Iran, and he ended the summit with encouraging news on the ongoing trade war with China. But the Chinese, though, are telling a different story. Amber Strong reports.
The immediate future of global economies hangs in the balance, but President Trump says he's feeling optimistic, telling reporters that the Chinese have reached out to him, hoping to resume negotiations.
China called last night our top trade people and said, let's get back to the table, so we'll be getting back to the table.
A Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson says they have no knowledge of the talks. This after the president seemed to express regret over reinstating tariffs on Chinese goods Friday.
Has the president any second thoughts on escalating the trade war with China?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Second thoughts?
Might as well.
Administration officials quickly correcting the record, saying the president didn't quite hear the question.
Again, he doesn't have second thoughts about what he's done. If anything, he wanted to clarify if he had second thoughts, it would be to raise the tariff.
Friday, the Dow dropped 600 points, and Asian markets took a tumble Monday morning, a reaction to tit-for-tat tariffs from the U.S. and China. In a tweet last week, the president hereby ordering American countries to look for an alternative to China.
He would have the authority to do that under IEEPA if he declared an emergency. He has not done that. I think what he was saying is he's ordering companies to start looking.
His Democratic challengers say the president's tactics and tweets create global chaos.
You keep your promises and you keep your threats. And what he does is he makes these blustering threats, like kicking all of our companies out of China, that people don't think really he's going to follow through on.
But trade wasn't the only thing on the minds of world leaders. The summit was met with a surprise visit from Iranian official Mohammad Zarif. Zarif was a guest of French President Emmanuel Macron. Macron taking up the mantle of piecing together the now shattered Iranian nuclear agreement. President Trump was not in that meeting but told reporters Monday he signed off on the discussions.
He asked me, I said, if you want to do that, that's okay. I don't consider that disrespectful at all.
When it comes to trade, the Trump administration says it will go forward with those $300 billion of tariffs set to kick in September 1st, but will continue their talks with the Chinese throughout the week. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Amber. Police fired water cannons and tear gas into the massive crowds in Hong Kong and also for the first time used their guns. Police fired a warning shot as the confrontation started to get out of control. It's the first time they've used live ammunition in the 10 weeks of protest. This weekend, the violence ramped up. Police were out in force using water cannons and launching tear gas to keep protesters at bay. Nearby, just across the border, Chinese troops, some dressed as civilians in handcuffs, apparently were getting ready to move in if Hong Kong police lost control. Today, leaders on both sides are calling for calm. Well, the human suffering in Venezuela is growing worse as new pressure is put on the president, Nicolas Maduro, to cede power. Meanwhile, the dictator's socialist policies are affecting people in ways no one imagined. And the country that's bearing the burden is neighboring Colombia. Chuck Holton has a story from the border town of Cúcuta.
When Carelis Herrera found out she was pregnant, she thought her life was over. Village life here makes it hard enough to provide for herself with the constant shortages, much less a baby. To make matters worse, she was only 14.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I wanted to kill myself. I said I was too young to have a baby and I couldn't do it.
Many of Carelis' friends face the same plight, and with no health care options here, they've crossed the border to have their babies in Colombia.
So I'm in the public hospital in Cúcuta, and this place is very busy because since there are no hospitals that have any way to care for people in Venezuela, the hospitals here are just overwhelmed with people coming in with everything from pregnancy to terrible gunshot wounds and all sorts of things. And the hospital here has spent millions of dollars caring for these people. We're going to go meet some of the mothers that are having their babies here.
More than 25,000 Venezuelans who have settled in Colombia since 2015 have had babies. This presented a problem as those children were essentially stateless persons. Earlier this month, the Colombian government decided to grant citizenship to these children so that they'll be able to go to school and access civil services.
They were caught in a limbo. And with this measure, the government of Colombia is saying that children's rights are above other interests and that children will be afforded citizenship rights, a right to education, to health care, and the protection that the state can give them.
So I am here at the public hospital in Cúcuta. All of the women that are waiting here, and they're all very close to delivering their babies. So this is Alexandra. She's telling me she's 29 years old. She's not pregnant. She's here because her daughter is pregnant, and her daughter is only 13 years old.
By the end of the year, of the registrations already done since 2015, we could be easily talking about 30,000 nationalized as Colombians this year.
Since the U.S. is increasing sanctions against Nicolas Maduro and his supporters in an effort to finally bring some lasting improvement to this country, that only means that conditions inside Venezuela will likely continue to deteriorate in the short term. But for these little ones, Colombia's compassion means their future just got a little bit brighter. From Cúcuta, Colombia, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Thanks, Chuck. Pat, back to you.
We congratulate the people of Colombia. Colombia is a wonderful country. We've done a great deal of things in Colombia over the years and have a warm feeling in our heart toward them. Maduro has got to go. Ladies and gentlemen, again, the OAS should act and get rid of that man. He is just destroying the fabric of that once prosperous nation. And it's like a cancer, you know, and it's a spreading type of thing. It gets worse and worse and worse. And now these little children have got to suffer, and thank goodness the Colombian people are moving to do something about it. But that's just one phase of the awful, awful torment that Maduro has wreaked upon his nation. And I don't know, well, anyhow, I would want to take force and get rid of him because the Cubans, the Chinese, the Russians are all propping him up. But he is an incompetent thug who needs to go. Well, have you heard of some of the terrible weather that's been going on the last few weeks? But there was a bad thing down in Atlanta, and John has more about that.
That is right, Pat. Back here at home, a terrifying moment at a PGA event in Atlanta this weekend. As spectators saw it covered during a rain delay, lightning struck the course. Take a look. The strike hit a 60-foot tree during the third round of the Tour Championship Saturday. Flying debris injured 6 people. Some were taken to the hospital for treatment, but all are expected to be okay. A tropical storm moving into the Caribbean Sea is on target for parts of Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Dorian is expected to reach hurricane strength in the coming days, passing over the western half of Puerto Rico and dropping back down to a tropical storm before slamming into the island of Hispaniola. Forecasters say it's too early to tell if the storm will stay together long enough to affect the Bahamas or, Pat, the U.S. coast.
Well, this is the beginning of the hurricane season, and areas have been spared, but it's one of those things that's just, they build up, you know, the heat builds up in the tropics, and this is the way the planet has of releasing that tremendous heat. And, well, anybody who builds along the coast just has to recognize hurricanes are a fact of life, and through the grace of the Lord, we have been spared in this area.
But when you live on an island and that's coming towards you, it's merciless.
It's just devastating.
Yeah.
What happened? And Puerto Rico just can't afford another one. It's just the last time it was such tragedy, and well, we'll see what happens, but we'll certainly pray for them.